Hello everyone and welcome again to the SQL course. So we are again here on a more advanced select statements lecture, and here we are going to see how we can insert data into certain tables using our select statements. So this section is a bit more advanced also. It's one of the sections where we compound on a lot of things that we've learned in the past. So if you are having trouble, don't hesitate to send me a message. I'll be happy to support you also in this journey. Okay, so we are here in this insert into using data from tables. This is a script that we are going to use now as an example. I'm going to go here to the Sakila.actor, so select all from Sakila.actor, and I'm going to order by first name. Now imagine something. Imagine I would like to have a table where I would want to have all the distinct names that I have for my customers. For example, a table where we would have Adam, Al, Alan, Albert, Alec, Angela, and so on. If I would like to have this table, I could create a table on my own with the name Sakila.firstname and then insert these rows by hand. Of course, this would be extremely cumbersome, and imagine in a database where you have millions and millions of customers. That is, of course, borderline impossible to do, to write all those names by hand, or at least it would be extremely expensive. Well, luckily we can do this with just a simple SQL instruction after creating the table. That's what we are going to explore here. So first, let me tell you here a small hint, which is we can have, for example, here we see that the names are repeated. We have 2 times Adam, we have 2 times Albert, 2 times Angela, and one of the things that I can do is, for example, I'm going to just select first name from Sakila.actor, order by first name, and let's look at the results. So as you can see, we have duplicate names. This is not what you want. We want one single line per name. We have here 3 birds, I think, so we have a lot of duplicates. How can we remove this? Well, we have here a clause really cool, which is the select distinct. This is not directly tied to this lecture, but it's a cool hint for you to know, which is when we use select distinct, we basically just bring distinct values from the columns that we have ahead. Now, one thing is that's really important is that you have first name, and that if you join another column, you no longer have the distinct values of the first name. No, you'll have the distinct values between first and last name, between the pair. So if I do this, so there are multiple Adams, but as the last name is not distinct, and as you have Grant and Hopper as different last names, you'll have 2 rows all the same, because distinct acts upon the columns that you select. If you select 10 columns, the distinct will bring the combination of different information that will be contained in those columns, okay? So of course, if you only have a column, that will bring the distinct of only that column, of course. Okay, so here we have all the names, and this is exactly what we want in our table, right? This is exactly the structure that we want in our table. We want a single row per name. How can we do that? Well, first let me create the structure of that table. So creating first name table. And that table will be, and I'm going to create table, Sakila.firstname. I'm going to create it as follows. So first name, it will be a varchar. I'm going to do a varchar 20. No need to have anything else. So I'm going to create this. There you go. Now, as we have this first name, we already have this structure, right, created. So if I go select all from Sakila.firstname, whoops, I'll have an empty table, because right now I've created its structure and metadata. I don't have any data inside. Of course, I could go here and insert into blah 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 Sakila.firstname and all the names that I see here on this result. That would be extremely cumbersome. So wouldn't it be cool if we have a single instruction that lets us pick data from a table and insert it into any other table? We have that. And that is insert into, but instead of having, and I'm going to put here Sakila.firstname, this is exactly the same insert into that we've studied before. So first name. And now instead of the values, remember the values, we can use insert into, and we can pick up our query and put it here instead of the values. It's that simple. So if I close the query right now, what will happen is instead of inserting manual values, which is exactly what the values mean, we are inserting the data that will go into our table. Notice that, of course, this complies with all the rules that we've seen in insert into before. So we have to have the same number of columns we are trying to insert into. We have to respect the data types that we have in each column. It's exactly the same. The only difference is that we are not writing the values by hand. We are now using another table or another set result to insert into this table. So if I run this one, this almost seems like magic, because if I go now to the, let me run this first name, I'll have exactly the first names that I've seen before. So now my sequila.firstname is populated with data. This is also a common expression to use when working with databases. Now notice that this was really cool, because we just compounded on something that we've learned before. We've learned how to use insert into, we've learned how to use select. It was just a matter of combining both of these instructions and making them super easy and working smoothly together. This will be something that you'll probably find when you are working and getting a bit more advanced in SQL, which is SQL is really flexible no matter what's the implementation that you are using. Either MySQL, Postgres, or Microsoft SQL, all the implementations are really flexible. You can combine probably most of what we've learned so far in queries, and you'll see that most of the concepts that we've learned will probably be able to be combined together, and that's really cool here in the language. And as I've said, remember, if I use here, for example, select distinct first name and last name and try to insert this into the sequila first name, I'll have an error, because I'm selecting here 2 columns and I'm only having 1 column in my table. Okay, so this always complies with the SQL rules that we know. Now, one good thing, and that's why I'm reserving this more to the end of the course, using these select statements, either these ones or the subqueries, are good exercises for visualization. What I mean by this is when you are writing the query, you are already viewing the table that you are creating in your mind. If you do that, you'll be able to look at this code and immediately visualize what's the underlying data that this code will create. In that way, you'll know what you can do with that result. Of course, in the beginning, you first run that piece of code as a standalone, and then you'll increment more instructions on top of that. But as you gain more and more experience, this exercise of visualizing what's the underlying table and data that you are creating will make you even a better and more flexible SQL developer or data analyst. So here we've learned how we can use selects with single columns, but of course, we are not reserved to that. That's what we are going to check in the next lecture, how we can use these instructions to create multiple columns and use this insert into with a select with more columns. So I'll see you in the next lecture.